We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Delia Garza, Austin City Council Member Delia Garza. I'm the chair of the Public Utilities Committee. We are meeting in chambers, and it is 3:08, and I'm calling the Public Utilities Committee to order, the meeting to order. We don't have any. Oh, I'm going to hand it off. I'm sorry, to Councilmember Houston, who's going to, because we're also this first item. We're going to share with the Health and Human Services Committee, and so she's going to call her meeting to order now.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ora Houston. I'm chair of the Health and Human Services Council Subcommittee, Council Committee, and I am here to call our meeting to order.
Thank you. And I don't have any lists of speakers signed up to generally speak on anything that's not on the agenda, so I just want to make sure that nobody walked in who wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda. Okay. So, do we have, so the first item is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. So I'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Zimmerman, seconded by Councilmember Kitchen to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 4-0. I'm having confusion on who's on my committee. So I think
she's over there.
Okay. Because Ellen and I are also on Health and Human Services, so we're sharing a quorum here. And then the next item is item number 3, and I just wanted to give a explanation of how the presentation is going to go. We already had a previous public testimony on this, so the first 15 minutes will be city staff presentation, and then Councilmember Zimmerman has invited some folks to speak also, so there'll be another panel for 15 minutes. And then because we've already had a public hearing, we're going to limit the general speakers to 2 for and 2 opposed for 3 minutes each, and I already have those names here. So we'll go ahead and get started. I would like to invite Dr. Wong from the Health and Human Services Department to begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. First, I understand it doesn't count in our 15 minutes. I'd like to introduce the other panelists that we will have for our group. And we have a total of 5 people. Again, I'm Dr. Phil Wong. I'm the Medical Director and Health Authority with the City of Austin Health and Human Services Department. We also have Dr. John Brown, who is, currently a research professor at the dental school at University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio, but he's now moved to Austin, and he's an Austin resident. He was previously the chair of the Department of Community Dentistry from 1984 to 2006. He's a public health dentist with extensive experience in oral epidemiology, dental health services research, clinical caries prevention, and community water fluoridation. He was the San Antonio site principal investigator for the World Health Organization second international collaborative study of oral health outcomes and the international collaborative study of childhood caries. So again, we're very fortunate he's now moved to Austin and is now an Austin resident. We also have Dr. Elise Cronin-Barron, who is, she's actually currently the president of the Capital Area Dental Society. She UT graduate and then got her degree at University of Washington in Seattle in School of Dentistry, and then came back to Austin. She was named New Dentist of the Year in 2011. She's been serving on the board of the Capital Area Dental Society for 6 years and is, again, currently the president. And then our other panelist is Dr. Matthew Heck. He is currently the president-elect of the Capital Area Dental Society. He's been also a delegate to the Texas Dental Association, worked in multiple dental settings, including community service clinics, international dental missions, Medicaid-based practices, corporate group dental practices, and private practice. And then we also have Dr. Jane Berazer, who is the assistant director with Austin Water. there will be three of us that are actually going to be speaking. I'm going to speak first, then Dr. Heck, and then Dr. Cronin-Barron. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. So the first point I'd like to make is that, fluoride is naturally occurring in our environment. It's the 13th most abundant element in the Earth's crust. It's in the air. It's naturally released in the environment through weathering of rocks, through atmospheric emissions from volcanoes, seawaters, and then also human activities, things like industrial processes, steel manufacturing. It's also naturally in water. In the surface water, it's levels of 0.1 milligram per liter, groundwater 0 to 5 milligrams per liter, ocean water 0.8 to 2.4 milligrams per liter, and it's also in the food and the plants. I think the natural level for Austin water is 0.2 to 0.25 naturally in the water. So it is naturally there. There are some places that naturally have higher levels of fluoride. When we're talking about community water fluoridation, we're talking about adjusting the level of fluoride to the level then that's been identified as beneficial for reduction of tooth decay. So you're taking the natural level of fluoride in the water, and if it needs additional fluoride to get to that optimal level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, then that's what's added. And 0.7 parts per million is the same as 0.7 milligrams per liter. I will point out that, to try to get a sense of what the dilution of, say, 1 part per million, 1 part per million is the same as 1 inch in relation to 16 miles. So that's the dilution of what we're talking about with fluoride in our water. The question is fluoridation still important? For the past 70 years, fluoride's been a principal contributor to reduction in tooth decay and loss. Community water fluoridation has played a major role in this dramatic decline in tooth decay across all age groups. Although America's dental health has improved significantly in recent decades, tooth decay is the most common chronic disease of childhood, even more common than asthma. Research shows children with dental problems much more likely to miss school, and teens with a recent toothache 4 times more likely to struggle academically. Fluoridation of water, community water fluoridation, is inexpensive, does not depend on access to professional care. Now, when we compare the data, the problem with tooth decay in Texas compared to the United States, more 6 to 8-year-olds in Texas have experienced caries or untreated decay than the U.S. This is for all groups by race, ethnicity, and gender. We also in Texas have higher poverty rates than the rest of the U.S. And so rates of tooth decay are not evenly distributed across the population. And in 2009 to 2010, national survey data showed that untreated dental caries among children varied by race, ethnicity, and federal poverty level. About 1 in 4 children living below 100% of the federal poverty level had untreated tooth decay, which can result in pain, again, school absences, and poor school performance. So if water fluoridation were to be discontinued over time, dental decay could be expected to increase even if topical products such as fluoride toothpaste and fluoride rinses are widely used. And if we stop fluoridation, everyone would be affected, but not equally. Many local residents lack dental insurance or face other barriers to securing dental care. And tap water is what gives these individuals immediate access to fluoride that helps them reduce their risk of tooth decay. The negative impact of ceasing fluoridation would fall disproportionately then on some of those residents. Now, one thing, it's very difficult, and I think it's important to hear that in a setting like this, you can't really make informed and educated decisions on this issue. And that's why there are many scientific reviews that are objectively conducted looking at the volume of the science that we're talking about. Otherwise, in a setting like this, you're going to hear cherry-picked data, research findings, interpretation, misstatements of fact. You'll hear scare tactics, things like that. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But what you have to do, really, is look at the full weight of the body of evidence, scientific evidence for and against, and review it in a objective, systematic process. And that's what I've listed some of the scientific reviews that have been systematically performed. I mean, there are thousands, literally, of studies related to this topic. I've got a whole box there full of some of the studies that I've had to review to look at this. And again, in this setting, one cannot just look at this volume of data. And it requires really expertise with the researchers, a diversity of a panel of experts to look at the data in a systematic and balanced manner. We rely on and review the work of some of these expert groups, and these things include work by CDC, the EPA, ADA, and other agencies and bodies. And, they update these reviews periodically in response to new science and amend their recommendations as appropriate. As you can see, some of the most latest scientific reviews, the U.S. Public Health Service just came out with an updated review July, August 2015, which I think everyone has been provided a copy of that report. So, again, it takes that systematic review of this data. For instance, you can't just look at a chart that shows a bunch of countries and their dental carie rates over time and say, hey, these countries right here that are dropping in dental carie rates don't have community water fluoridation. You don't know if they don't have centralized water systems, so they can't fluoridate the water, but instead they have fluoridated salt programs or other mechanisms that they have very intensive school dental health programs with national health care, things like that, because those are factors in interpreting some of this data. And all of this data, again, is very complex. I mean, looking at these studies, it just takes a lot to really evaluate how the study design, whether there are biases involved in that, and what other limitations and strengths there are with those studies. So I'm just going to go through one example of a systematic review is the U.S. Task Force on Community Preventive Services. It's an independent, non-federal, volunteer body of experts in public health, prevention, research, practice, and policy that oversees the systematic reviews done for the Community Guide. They develop evidence-based recommendations on the basis of those systematic review results and identify areas in further need of research. And so one of the things, they actually did their first report on this October 2000, and they updated it April of 2013. But in the 2000 report and the 2013 report is still being published. Their summary and conclusions are that they recommend community water fluoridation based on strong evidence of effectiveness in reducing tooth decay. But what they looked at, to get you a sense of what that process is like, they looked at that time 21 studies qualified for review. Now I think the updated review had 28. They looked at the decay rates measured before and after water fluoridation, a median decrease of 29% among children aged 4 to 17 when compared to control groups. There was 21 study arms that had that. Decay rates measured after water fluoridation only, a median decrease of 50% among children aged 4 to 17 years when compared with control groups. And then fluoridation was found to help decrease tooth decay both in communities with varying decay rates and among children of varying socioeconomic status. They also looked at some of the economic efficiency of community water fluoridation programs. Median cost per person per year for 75 water systems receiving fluoridated water was $2.70 among 19 systems that served less than 5,000 people in the population, and then it was 40 cents per person among 35 systems that served greater than 20,000 people. Community water fluoridation was cost savings. In smaller communities with the 5,000 to 20,000 residents, fluoridation was estimated to be cost saving where decay incidents in the community exceeded 0.06 tooth surfaces per person annually. And actually, Dr. Brown, who is on our panel, was instrumental in doing one of the studies looking at economic cost in Texas, and we might hear more from that if you like. Next slide talks about systemic versus topical benefits. And, you hear from the other side sometimes that it's only topical. But this is, I use an actual CDC slide because it shows that CDC still acknowledges, that in addition to the systemic, there's continued evidence supporting, in addition to the topical, there is continued evidence supporting a systemic benefit also. Earliest researchers initially hypothesized it was just incorporated into developing enamel, but then it's also the topical effect. And so what it is ingesting small amounts of fluoride during early stages of tooth development strengthens tooth enamel, decreasing the likelihood of cavities later in life, but then also maintaining a constant low level of fluoride in the mouth is the most effective measure in cavity prevention, as opposed to infrequent high concentration fluoride gels, foams, and varnishes. Water fluoridation then is a method that promotes continuous low levels of fluoride in the saliva and in the mouth. Now, next I've got, for the next 3 slides, some of the organizations that support community water fluoridation. Because the point is really, it is today water fluoridation is recommended by nearly all public health, medical, and dental organizations, including the American Dental Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Institute of Medicine, U.S. Public Health Service, and the World Health Organization. And as you probably heard, the CDC has recognized community water fluoridation as one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century. And so that's one slide. Here's another list of those that support community water fluoridation. Another one. So now if you look at current fluoridation activity, it's now 44 of the 50 largest cities in the United States have fluoridated water. And you know, sometimes you get the sense you're hearing these things, oh, communities are looking at this and they're all dropping out of fluoridation and they're stopping their fluoridation programs. Actually, in the past 15 years, from 2000 to 2014, more than 449 U.S. communities in 42 states have voted to adopt or retain successful fluoridation programs. So actually, if you look at the numbers, the U.S. population that's served by fluoridation systems continues to grow. In 1992, it was 62% with 144 million people. In 2012, 74% of the population, it's 210 million people, are served by community water fluoridation at optimal levels. So we're talking literally hundreds of millions of U.S. citizens that have been benefiting from community water fluoridation for decades. So bottom line, some of the major issues that you're going to hear, you know, benefits of community water fluoridation. As I mentioned, this has been extensively studied. I showed you a list of some of the systematic reviews that have been conducted. All of it's proven to be safe and effective. The systematic reviews, they concluded what community water fluoridation is effective in decreasing dental caries, prevalence, and severity. Effects included significant increases in the proportion of children who were caries-free and significant reductions in the number of teeth or tooth surfaces with caries in both children and adults. When analyses were limited to studies conducted after the introduction of other sources of fluoride, especially fluoride toothpaste, beneficial effects across the lifespan from community water fluoridation were still apparent. Next issue, dental fluorosis, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that. You know, more than 90% of the dental fluorosis in the United States is the very mild or mild form, most often appearing as barely visible lacy white markings or spots on the enamel. The EPA considers the severe form of dental fluorosis with staining and pitting of the tooth surface as the actual adverse health effect to be prevented. Severe dental fluorosis is rare in the United States. Its prevalence couldn't even be estimated among adolescents in a national survey because there were too few cases among the survey participants examined to achieve statistical reliability. And the National Research Council showed that the prevalence of severe dental fluorosis was near zero at fluoride concentrations of 2 milligrams per liter, which is much higher than what we're talking about at the recommended 0.7 milligrams per liter. Now, you're going to hear concerns about other health effects. A lot of times they'll cite this 2006 National Research Council report. The thing about this report, if you look in the report itself, what the report says is the committee did not evaluate the risks or benefits of the lower fluoride concentrations, 0.7 to 1.2 milligrams per liter, used in water fluoridation. Therefore, the committee's conclusions regarding the potential for adverse effects from fluoride at 2 to 4 milligrams per liter in drinking water do not apply at the lower water fluoride levels commonly experienced by most U.S. citizens. Bottom line, they'll cite a lot of these studies in here, but the concentration levels that you hear about fluoride are much higher than we're talking about with community water fluoridation. And we know even, iron, oxygen, even water at too high levels can be have adverse health effects. You'll hear studies about IQ. There's some Chinese studies. I have some of the studies right there. They were performed in these remote mountain villages in China. They report lower IQ among children exposed to fluoride. And the levels of fluoride they're exposed to, and these are naturally occurring fluoride, are like sometimes in the 2.5 to 4.1 milligram per liter level, where the control group that they're comparing it to are actually the ones that did not have the problems are at the levels of fluoridation that we're talking about for our community water fluoridation. You also hear maybe that the Harvard study people reviewed that study and have supported it. Actually, that's been debunked. I mean, the deans of the Harvard University's 3 leading health institutions have issued a statement calling fluoridation an effective and safe public health measure for people of all ages. I know you'll hear some issues regarding about infant formula. In 2011, ADA convened an expert panel, produced evidence-based clinical recommendations regarding fluoride intake from reconstituted infant formula and enamel fluorosis. What they said was they suggest the continued use of powdered or liquid concentrate infant formulas reconstituted with optimally fluoride drinking water while being cognizant of the potential risk of enamel fluorosis development for those parents who consume powdered or liquid concentrate infant formula as their main source of nutrition. So that's the latest of the ADA recommendations on that. Yeah, the cancer, again, there's been studies that have been cited reporting an association between osteosarcoma among young males and estimated fluoride exposure from drinking water. They've been subsequent studies published in 2011 that actually a more accurate objective measure than previous estimates that showed no significant association between fluoride levels and osteosarcoma risk, which is consistent with all the systematic reviews.
Do you want to
You're going to give me a few.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
And then the last thing you'll hear about is fertilizer byproduct. Again, it's sort of a scare tactic. What it is, the way that we get the fluorosilicic acid that is put in the water is just a chemical process where some of the products that are formed through that process are used for gypsum and sheetrock, and as there's phosphate is produced that is used in fertilizer, but the rest is used for this process. I've just got 2 more slides, I think. So I just wanted to review the prior council activities. In 2011, the Austin City Council Public Health and Human Services Subcommittee extensively reviewed the topic, had more than 6 hours of testimony. They passed resolution, as you can see, supporting the continuation of water fluoridation, also required Austin Water Utility and the Health Department provide some information to customers highlighting fluoride and infant information. Just of note that in April 2011, the statesman did a PolitiFact check on one of the statements that came out of that Austin residents say fluoride compound added to local water supply is toxic waste. That was found to be false. So our staff recommendations are to continue Austin community water fluoridation at the U.S. Public Health Service recommended level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, and to continue to monitor the issue as new information becomes available. I'm now going to turn it over briefly to Dr. Heck with the Capital Area Dental Society just to show a few slides from the clinical perspective. Oh.
I'd like to mention something. In the June meeting, the dental community was given essentially no warning of this issue coming up. The resolution was given us to the Monday of that week. So we would appreciate if the council would allow Dr. Cronin and I a 5-minute extension of this so we could give our statement. Thank you.
You want to give it to the other side?
I'm okay adding it, but we will add it to the other side as well. So
Sure. Apologize for that, sorry.
that's okay.
Okay, thank you for having me. Again, I'm Dr. Matthew Heck. I'm the president-elect of the Dental Society here in Austin, also representing the Texas and American Dental Associations and our position on community water fluoridation. I think Dr. Huang summarized things very well. The consensus of the scientific community in the United States is that this is a safe and effective practice. I just wanted to briefly show a couple of images so we could really see what are we talking about. As clinicians, Dr. Cronin and I see this on a daily basis. So the risk of not allowing this vitamin to be available to our population are cases like this. We see these quite commonly. So childhood decay is something that this isn't in a third world country. This is in clinics such as here in Austin. I've seen this myself. Many of us here in this room have seen this. So again, greater risk without exposure to fluoride, a greater risk for these kind of conditions to occur. Just a couple of data points on the many millions of school hours that are missed. Of course, the lifetime negative effects that occur from children and then moving into adulthood of having dental problems. And then, of course, this consensus of studies that is in children that there is a reduction of 30 to 50% of caries resulting from community water fluoridation. That is the consensus of science right now. The dental infections, this is something that progresses even further as a risk of high caries rates in our children and in our citizens. This is for all citizens, adults included. In a 3-year span, we had over 4 million emergency room visits, costing our healthcare system over $2.7 billion, and over 100 patients dying in that period from these dental infections. So this isn't just a small toothache. This isn't something small that we can just make, put a filling on. Sometimes this is very, very serious. So those are some of the risks that we have of not exposing our citizens to these, or giving our citizens the benefit of this nutrient. This is what you're looking at, the risk. The scientific community agrees. Our consensus is that the only risk that our children and our citizens have from ingesting fluoridated community water is mild dental fluorosis. What you're seeing here occurs in about 5% of the population. The numbers on that, the vast majority of our citizens either have no fluorosis that drink this water, or about a third of them experience very mild to undetectable amounts that even I could not detect. The severe fluorosis that you'll see some images of, the only accepted risk of overfluoridation, is not something that occurs here in Austin. This isn't something that occurs in controlled environments. This occurs in places like we even have in West Texas, where the level of fluoride in the rock in their natural water is much, much higher concentrations, just like Dr. Huang was talking about. So I wanted to leave this image up just to show you. This is what the science shows. There's going to be a lot of positions and statements, and there will be certain data brought up, but the consensus of science in the United States, on the left, this is what happens when there is a lack of education, a lack of proper hygiene, and a lack of exposure to fluoride. On the right, this is the only risk that we pose right now that we agree upon to our citizens. And I will mention that 5%, those teeth are actually stronger. I do want to mention, before I have Dr. Cronin get up, I've been practicing dentistry for 6 years. I've done a lot of work in community health. And my wife is a dentist as well. She works at the St. David's Foundation, and many of their representatives are here in support of community water fluoridation because of its safety and efficacy. It's come to my attention that the opposition is going to show a video of that group and what they do for our community. I can't really figure out why that is, because it is an organization that supports community water fluoridation. They apply fluoride varnish to the children. They work as hard as they can to educate and treat a lot of the underserved children in our community. They still only serve 16% of the kids in the Austin area. So there are still the majority of our children that are underserved, that need the benefit of programs like community water fluoridation to improve their dental health. And I just appreciate your time, and I'll introduce Dr. Cronin.
Thank you, Dr. Heck. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Dr. Elise Barron. I'm the president of the Capital Area Dental Society. I'm also a dentist here in Austin. I'm a wife, mother, sister, and daughter of Austin residents. I'm not an activist or a politician. I'm here today because I love research, evidence, and serving my patients. Like many Austinites, I pride myself on being a non-traditionalist, a non-conformist, on just not following the masses in blind obedience. And as a dental community, we have been discussing, organizing, and battling over this topic of water fluoridation for years. And in 2011, when it rose again, I started to question everything I had been taught. And it seemed pretty juvenile to just repeat everything I had learned in school, or repeat studies from the original study 50 years ago. Going through the recent literature and research with an open mind, I found myself supporting water fluoridation because of excellent controlled peer-reviewed studies with good scientific methods. And you guys have all received a packet of some of those references. There's education and there's experience, like Dr. Heck talked about. And as dentists, we've all had experiences where we know fluoride has been absolutely central to the diagnosis. Last month, I had to extract several baby teeth on a 7-year-old. The teeth were hopeless and beyond repair, and she was in pain. And the mother didn't believe in the use of fluoride. Respecting her right to parent didn't mean I had to give up the obligation to let her know that those cavities could have been prevented. As an individual's doctors, that's what we try and do, is prevent oral disease. And as healthcare providers, I believe we also have an obligation to try and prevent it on a larger scale. Those opposed to fluoridation project fluoride as poisonous and detrimental at any level, but let's keep in mind that many things healthy in moderation are harmful in excess. Vitamin C can cause kidney stones, headaches, insomnia, and vomiting. Iron overdoses can cause cirrhosis, heart failure, and diabetes, yet still recommended, especially for pregnant women. Excessive amounts of fluoride can cause some adverse effects, such as mild fluorosis, Excessive amounts of fluoride can cause some adverse effects, but those are only seen in concentrations well above those in Austin or other communities with water fluoridation. I represent the voice of the Capital Area Dental Society, the Texas Dental Association, and the American Dental Association. We all have scientific backgrounds. We've read and analyzed the most current research to the best of our ability. As doctors, we have not only learned but experienced the incredible value that fluoride plays in helping preserve the health of teeth. Please, council members, we ask you to not only lean on your own understanding of this issue, but of ours, the doctors who care for our own families and for yours, and base your decision on the consensus of the scientific community and the safety and efficacy of community water fluoridation. We're here today because we value the oral health of our patients, our neighbors, and hope that you as our public representatives decide to continue to invest in the health of our citizens. Thank you.
Yes.
I got 9 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for our first speakers. Does the panel or the committee have any questions for any of those speakers?
Do I hear from the other side and then start questions?
Well, I just figured since they were up here. Okay. Do you want to call it the Councilmember Zimmerman's panel? I don't know who you're.
The other side
Okay.
of the question.
Did you have?
But I think some of them
Is
spoke
there a
last time.
panel that's representing? Okay.
Yeah. I showed here. So I showed that they ran 9 minutes over. So we'll add 9 minutes
Thank you.
onto this one.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Griffin Cole. I'm a dentist here in Austin as well, and I've been practicing for 23 years. I spoke at the last meeting, so I won't go through a whole intro of my accomplishments, but I can tell you that I've been studying this longer than most people in this room. And if you look at Dr. Wong's presentation, as good as it was, his first 2 slides contradict each other. If it's been around for so long and it's so great, why is decay rates going up? Why are they going up? I have a bunch of slides to show, but I may not even get to one because I just want to talk about this. I thought about this on the way over. I've been arguing this for about 15 years now, and all my arguments have been on the science because we've got boxes, probably 10 of the ones that he has on that one box to show that it's not effective. And we have to differentiate, which I don't think I've done a good job of, between topical and systemic. Those are the 2 forms of getting fluoride in your body. Topical, you physically rub it on your teeth. With toothpaste, gels, with varnishes, with the trays in the office. Topically, rubbing on the teeth. That's how fluoride works. I won't argue that. We're not talking about that today. So anything you hear on that, just cast it aside. It has nothing to do with water fluoridation. 0. We're talking about ingesting it systemically. The water passing over your teeth for half a second does not give you a topical effect. Scientists all agree on that. There's no topical effect when you drink it. So now it's in the body. So now tell me, in the body, is it effective? Science shows that it's not. Everything he cited, including the CDC, will tell you that it's topical and post-eruptive, meaning the teeth are already in the mouth, topical application only. Okay? So it's in our body. So how does it affect our teeth? Negatively, in that you get the fluorosis, the brown and white spots, the mottling, the teeth are more porous. That's not a positive thing. In addition to that, all the issues, and there is science as recently as just last month on thyroid problems, pineal gland problems, enzyme problems, bone cancers. All that stuff can be validated with science just as well on our side. So when you hear them arguing, he's right. Experts against experts, nothing gets accomplished. I agree with that. And that's why I thought, well, let's just get down to basics here. Topical is how it works. Rubbing it on your teeth. Drinking it, it's ineffective. Science shows that over and over again. And by the way, I'm good. If we want to keep adding fluoride, I've been buying bottled spring water since before my kids were born. I got a state-of-the-art filtration system on my house. If I go to a restaurant, I order bottled water. I'm good. You guys aren't going to affect me or my children at all. It's the people that don't have the option or the luxury to do that is who I'm fighting for. I'm not here for a self-serving purpose. I'm really concerned about those who are forced to drink this water. It's not helpful, and it's harmful. So, to my young colleagues who are relatively new dentists, you're not looking at the science carefully. You really need to, seriously, because I was taught the same way, and I believed it as well. I I taught my patients that for the first couple of years. And then I started getting informed. I started looking at things. Look at all the latest reports, even from the Cochrane report, which I think Dr. Wong had on his chart. They clearly say that it's not effective. I mean, I think it was the second thing you listed. Quote from the Cochrane report here. There is very little contemporary evidence meeting with this review's inclusion criteria that has evaluated the effectiveness of water fluoridation for the prevention of caries. That's their main statement. The NRC report, they were told do not study any silicofluorides in the water. They were literally told do not study any of the silicofluorides, which is what's added in water fluoridation. He says that they say that there's nothing going on there yet. I can read 2 quotes from 2 of the people who are actually on the panel. These are scientists, toxicologists, not dentists, not lay people, toxicologists. John Dool, who's the chairman, said, what the committee found is that we've gone with the status quo regarding fluoride for many years, for too long, really, and now we need to take a fresh look. When we looked at the studies that have been done, we found that many of these health questions are unsettled, and we have much less information than we should, considering how long water fluoridation has been going on. He's the chairman. Dr. Hardy Lineback, PhD in biochemistry on the panel. In my opinion, the evidence that fluoridation is more harmful than beneficial is now overwhelming, and policymakers who avoid thoroughly reviewing recent data before introducing new fluoridation schemes do so at risk of future litigation. These are two of the scientists on the panel. Catherine Thiessen, another one on the panel, toxicologist, put out a huge report on the ineffectiveness and danger of water fluoridation. So I got lots of colleagues that are about to follow me. Can you just bring up my thing real fast? I'm just going to show you 5 quick slides, and then I want to pass it on because there's so many great speakers. Next one. Oh, is it the right one? Okay, we talk about studies. He talks about systematic reviews. There has never been a single randomized clinical trial to prove that fluoridation actually works. Never. There has never been a long-term follow-up study to prove that fluoridation actually worked. Silicofluorides have never been FDA approved for ingestion, and they were never studied prior to dumping in our water supply. CDC, the one that my friend Dr. Wong quotes all the time, fluoride's predominant effect is post-eruptive and topical, 2001, and they seconded it again in 2012. We are unaware of data about the additional protection from tooth decay that could result from consumption of fluoridated drinking water, CDC, 2012. FDA classifies fluoride as an unapproved drug. To date, the FDA has approved no fluoride-containing supplements as prescription or over-the-counter drugs. He made fun of this slide. That's fine. Let's make fun of it. Look at all these. I can't differentiate between which countries are fluoridated and not fluoridated and actual decay rates. Although, according to the last 3 speakers, decay has gone up. I don't see it in my practice, but let's just say it has. If it has, then your argument is null and void because obviously it's not working. If it's gone down like this is showing, maybe there's something else at play here. Maybe diet. Wow. Maybe home care has gotten better. Maybe the things that really affect dental health are at play here and not water fluoridation. And for my young colleagues, just read that statement and see how you feel after reading that, because that to me is very intimidating. And I'm going to pass this on. There was one slide that, if you could bring up, that Dr. Presley put up. We have Henry Rodriguez from LULAC is here to speak soon, and I wanted to put up this one 2005 CDC study showing the effect on Hispanics and African Americans is so much more involved. It's the next one. This is from, again, 2005 CDC study accumulating over many years showing the effects of fluoridation on Hispanics and African Americans and how much higher it is, sometimes up to 110% more actual negative effect on them. He's going to cover that in more detail. And then if you go back to the last slide, this is a group of people who don't endorse water fluoridation, and that's a small group, but read them and see who they are. They're not a bunch of dental groups. And thank you very much for your time again, guys.
My name is Bill Swale with People's Pharmacy, and my employees wonder why I'm here because there's a strong research showing that you lower your thyroid hormone with fluoride, the drug fluoride. So if we're lowering the thyroid hormone and we have to make hormones or sell hormones, the thyroid hormone, then why am I here? It looks like I'm putting myself out of business. It is dose related, by the way. So the real problem we have here is that during the summer months, people are drinking a lot of water, a lot of tap water, and so we have a problem in this community because of the doses, even though it's not approved by the FDA, there is a drug, and I brought this polyviflor, and we never dispense it. I don't know why, but we just don't. Most stores don't dispense it anymore. One reason is the price of this is $200, and that's my cost, $200. Your cost would be $300. No, I'm just teasing. It's interesting that piddle diddle is an old Texas term, and it means procrastinate. So are we procrastinating on this? Is there really enough research to show that one side is? I don't know how y'all do this. I don't know how y'all sit there listening to both sides and try to determine what's their best side to go to. You know, it is sad that the data may not be correct. As a druggist, as a pharmacist, I can tell you that a lot of drugs are on the market today. They shouldn't be on the market until you study the data, how the research got passed and how it went on. And a lot of times it's due to the money, and that's sad. And I don't think money's involved here, but we got to figure out what we can do to solve this problem. And I think if there's a referendum for just 1 year or 2 years, y'all have already paid, I think, in advance for the fluoride in the water now for 2 years, I understand. But if you had a referendum, and let's study the research, let's really study it, and get make sure it's not based on something that's not tainted, something that there wasn't money involved, and that's what we have, and that's why in the national government people are distrusting the government because they're not really watching the in-house, and I think that's the real problem. But I think it's really important to understand that this is a drug, and requires a prescription, by the way, and there's side effects to it. And I think that if you're not aware of that, like there's a drug for oral psoriasis, and this will affect and make it worse, make the drug worse. This drug also, if you're on Dilantin, a drug for seizures, you can have more seizures because this will lower the effect of the Dilantin. So they're very careful. And this is not FDA approved. There's nothing on there that says that it is, but it does require a prescription. And it's very expensive. Well, why is it expensive? Well, that's another thing to look at because possibly, I know when Accutane came out with all their side effects, babies born without legs and arms and all that, boy, the drug price went up. And whenever there's a real danger with something, and I hope it's not true with this, but if there's a danger with fluoride, then the drug company is trying to cover themselves with increased insurance. And by the way, these are not drops. They discontinued the drops. These are strips. So what you do is you put the strips in the baby's mouth or the child's mouth so that they don't get overdosed. Okay? So it's not an easy thing to look at. And I understand the situation y'all are in. I don't know how you make the decision. It's dividing the community of dentists. You have some dentists that are really against it and some that are for it. So it's a decision that's kind of tough. So just listen to our side, okay? That's all you got to do. Just support it. So a couple of facts here you need to know about. In developed countries, there's no fluoride added to the water in most all developed countries. Not all of them, but most all of them. Fluoride countries, where they add the fluoride, they found out there's not less tooth decay. That's a meta-analysis. It affects many tissues. I mentioned the thyroid gland, other tissues too, the mental conditions. There's lots of research going on now, what fluoride can do to affect children, especially children, young children. And it's really sad that we're doing this and we don't know for sure what's happening to our children when they take this because, once again, it's not dose-related. A lot of these kids now playing football, they're out there drinking lots of water, and sometimes they can't afford reverse osmosis, so they're drinking their drinking water with lots of fluoride, and that can cause lots of problems. So, once again, I don't know why I'm here, because we make money when people are not doing it very well. So, by the way, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Henry Rodriguez from San Antonio with the League of United Latin American Citizens, and I'm here to tell you that the nation of LULAC, the entire country, all of us, are in direct and firm opposition to fluoridating our public water. We are one of the most active, dynamic, well-respected LULAC councils anywhere in this country, and I say that with a lot of confidence because that's who we are. In '66, in 1985, and 2000, there were referendums trying to pass that fluoridate our water. Well, the establishment, if you will, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. They used everyone, mayors, very popular mayors, very popular politicians, the archbishop, what have you. And on the other side were us, the rank and file, grassroots people that really cared about what's going on. Yes, at first, it was a balancing act, because what I saw in 1966, you have scientists on one side and scientists on the other. What do I know? I'm not going to take a chance, and that's why I voted against it. I'm not going to take a chance, and you should neither. Nobody should. If the CDC even says a little bit, says it might be bad for babies, it's good enough, you should say, no, let's revisit this. We met, our council, there's 11 people on that city council. We met with most of them, about 8. None of them, not one of them could give us a report as what were the benefits since 2002 when they started putting that fluoride in the water, the public water. No one could give us an answer and say, look, there's 40% less cavities in the babies. That is bad. Now, there's people that are in different stages of life. The very old, the very young, like babies and old people, athletes, laborers. Our people that work very hard in the sun, they drink more water. So one size does not fit all. Definitely does not. So we ask you, those of you that are pretty much on our side, to please work with your council people and ask them all these great questions. If you're going to champion something, champion the law, champion accountability to say, look, we're throwing all this money to pay for this fluoride, yet where are the results? Give it to me in plain numbers, don't lie type of thing. Now, we have exhaustively, I did a lot of research, but I'm the layperson. I would not dare go against them. The first thing they'll say, what kind of degrees do you have? What kind of studies have you done? Really, what university did you attend? Well, I went to the School of Hard Knocks, and nobody's going to pull the wool over my eyes, especially people that come and use their titles and tell me, look, this is what's good for you. I know what's good for me. I have been an activist for over 40 years. And you're not going to tell me that this is not a civil rights violation, because forced medication is exactly that. When you use all that money, all that power, and then you say, all of you, you drink it or tough luck. If you don't have money for bottled water for your babies, tough luck. Well, that's unacceptable. That is totally unacceptable. So, look, all I'm asking is that you do some soul searching and real research. Listen to your hearts. If there is a little chance that our kids are in danger of something adverse, then please say no. Use all that precious money to educate, better diets, better oral hygiene, all these things that really make sense, and stop throwing that money away. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to go ahead and call the speakers now, the signed up speakers. So, James McLean.
Hello. My name is James McLean. I'm a resident of Austin, District 8. Hello, Councilwoman Troclair. I'm here not only as a dentist here in Austin, but also as a father of a 2-year-old daughter who drinks City of Austin water filtered through a carbon filter in my refrigerator. I appreciate that the City of Austin does provide community water fluoridation. I understand the concerns about, forced medication without consent, but the government chooses that without our consent, all of our salt is going to have iodine in it. All of our flour is going to have folic acid, niacin, and iron. Most of that iron is mined. Some of that iron is actually a steel mill waste product. It's the rust that's scraped off fresh steel. But these are things that are accepted to be safe and beneficial. The vitamin D that's in vegetable oil. We don't have a choice about whether or not that goes into our flour or our salt, but there are noticeable health benefits for that, and they're shown to be safe. For fluoride, I appreciate that this is a very difficult position or a difficult issue for a layperson. The last good science we had on this, frankly, is 60 years old. There's a reason that they started putting fluoride in the water in the first place. They say that there's no topical benefit. That's why they started putting it in the water 50, 60 years ago. It's because they saw communities where there was not fluoride naturally occurring in the water, and they saw communities where it was. That's drinking water, and they saw a difference in the caries rates. And I appreciate that since then, they say there's no contemporary studies, and there really isn't a lot of great science lately. A lot of the reviews are going to say something to the fact that it's unclear. But a lot of those studies are the ones that they're citing as far as adverse health effects. All of the cancers, osteosarcoma, the reviews consistently show that these are weak deleterious effects, weak evidence of preventive effects in some cases. But the science back when we started putting the fluoridation in the water was clear that community water fluoridation does reduce dental decay rates. Now, dental decay rates can be going down for a lot of other reasons. We are getting better at understanding why cavities happen. The sugar lobby did a great job of convincing us that it's all about brushing and flossing. Brush and floss, please, please brush and floss. But understanding dietary habits, hygiene habits makes a tremendous difference. But not having fluoride is going to be detrimental to the health of citizens of Austin, and I am glad that my daughter will be drinking fluoridated water, and my patients as well. We care about our patients. They say that, in politics, follow the money, and it just doesn't work here. As dentists, we stand to benefit tremendously from an increase in the prevalence of dental caries. We would do very well with that. The folks that are against fluoride, I don't believe that they're really have any malicious intent. I believe we are interpreting the same science differently. And I understand that that makes this difficult for the council, but I would like to voice my support for the continuation of community water fluoridation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ray Nadler-Olenek.
Well, I'm delighted to play a clip about the great St. David's Foundation Healthy Smiles dental program. And while you're watching, which serves Title I schools in Austin, Title I, okay? Now, while you're watching this, please ask yourselves why after 40 years of fluoridation, this program is not only needed, but operates exclusively in low-income areas. Play it, please.
We are just making sure that all the children of Austin and the surrounding areas are taken care of.
You know, small things like the dental program did so much to so many people.
We're taking care of people in Central Texas every day, 50 weeks out of the year. It's a great feeling.
Show the picture, please. Okay. One sentence, please. Water fluoridation promises dental equity for economically disadvantaged children, but it doesn't deliver. So it's time to stop wasting millions of taxpayer dollars on this exercise in futility and concentrate on what we know really works. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Stephanie, I believe it's Rubin.
Thank you very much. I'm Stephanie Rubin. I'm an Austin resident and parent of a 4-year-old. We drink tap water and are thrilled to live in a community with clean and fluoridated water. How lucky we are that St. David's is doing this tremendous work. Of course, it's a very limited prevention strategy in Central Texas. It doesn't reach all children. It doesn't reach all the children's dental health needs. And community water fluoridation is an important prevention strategy, a comprehensive strategy for all of us. I'm familiar with the research on fluoridation and am completely confident that fluoride is safe for my child and for my whole family. I trust the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and my local public health officials on the benefits and risks of fluoridation. I've heard from some parents, some friends of mine, that my kids brush their teeth, so why do we need community water fluoridation? Why should I care? My answer to them is that drinking fluoridated water adds important protection against tooth decay. It's safe and has been called one of the greatest public health benefits of the 20th century. And regarding the the gentleman's comments about why tooth decay has gone up even when we have community water fluoridation. I'm sure part of the problem is sugar, sugary sodas, lack of dental health care access. So getting rid of community water fluoridation is our answer. That's going to help the public health benefit. And it's free. This is a wonderful, incredible public health benefit for all of us. Let's keep focused on the decades of solid and irrefutable evidence that proves the health benefits and safety of fluoridation. I've read the web commentary, and it's truly a fact that this is not evidence that can be interpreted in different ways by different scientific scholars. The weight of the evidence is very, very clear. This is a safe and effective form of a public health benefit. Finally, I just want to comment about, I realize this issue keeps coming up over and over again, and I realize that the City Council, I appreciate that you keep hearing from both sides, and I strongly support continuing the community's water fluoridation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joan Sefcik.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Joan Sefcik, and I practice dentistry here in Austin, and I've been practicing for over 30 years. I'm currently the president of the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine. I was accepted into dental school when I was 19 years old, and that didn't happen without a lot of studying on my part. And I didn't stop studying after I got out of dental school. Dental decay is caused by a bacterial infection, not from a lack of fluoride. In fact, fluoride doesn't exist naturally anywhere in your body. There are no recommended daily requirements for fluoride, and there are no diseases caused by a lack of fluoride. God did not intend for fluoride to be in your body. Therefore, fluoride is a toxin. That's why toothpaste have a warning on them if you swallow them to call poison control. It's right here. When you drink or ingest fluoride, it combines with the hydrochloric acid in your stomach and forms hydrofluoric acid. Hydrofluoric acid is so caustic that it eats through glass. You can't keep it in a glass container. This hydrofluoric acid goes throughout your body and damages your organs and your tissues. This is particularly harmful to children whose organs are developing. Even God knows that fluoride isn't good for babies because it's filtered out of breast milk. If you give infants formula made with fluoridated water, they can receive 400% the amount of fluoride an adult receives per pound of body weight. By the way, Brita and pure water filters do not remove fluoride. Fluoride in the body damages the brain. It lowers IQ, is linked to autism, ADHD, and other neurological problems. Fluoride calcifies the pineal gland, which makes melatonin, which aids in sleep. How many people have sleeping problems these days? Fluoride damages the thyroid gland, replacing iodine and causing hypothyroidism and thyroid cancer. This is prevalent today. Fluoride makes bones more brittle and susceptible to fracture. Hip fractures in the elderly has been linked to water fluoridation. The World Health Organization, the National Institute for Dental Research, Newsweek magazine, and even the Journal of the American Dental Association cite studies that show no statistically significant differences in decay rates in cities that are fluoridated or non-fluoridated. Water fluoridation does not decrease tooth decay, but it does cause dental fluorosis, the permanent spots in the teeth that 41% of our adolescents have nowadays. Sadly, this means that their bodies have been overexposed to fluoride in their formative years. I ask you to please stop placing this toxic chemical that God never intended to be in our bodies, in our water supply. The health of the people of Austin, their pets, and especially the children who are the most vulnerable is in your hands. Thank you.
Okay. Those are all our speakers, and I'm going to open it up to questions. Councilmember Zimmerman.
Thank you. Dr. Wang, I had a couple of questions if you could help me out. Or you have a mic right there? That's fine. That works great. I'm pretty impressed. This is a list of 110 organizations. I counted them here. 110 professional organizations, supporting fluoridation. It's pretty impressive. So when I see that kind of consensus out of professional organizations, I set my bar a little bit higher about what I expect for scientific proof. So can you help me understand the lowering of the EPA recommended limits? It was 1.2 parts per million down to 0.7 ever since, the 60s or so, right? And then in 2011, they lowered it to 0.7. And I said, okay, cool. If you're going to do that with all this scientific consensus, I'm going to look for a controlled exposure study. I'm going to look for something that's really serious that says, hey, we've done the studies and we know this is the optimum limit. We're using 0.7 because, 0.2 might be too little and 2 is too much, but I can't find the science that backs up that number. Can you illuminate me on that? Why 0.7? Why not 0.5, 0.2, 0.1?
Yep. I'll start, and I might even let Dr. Brown speak so he has an opportunity since he's participating. But, originally there was that range that was recommended because with the thought that there were variations in the consumption of water based on climate, warmer weather climates, that people drank more. So that, and I think historically Austin was at that lower range to begin with. I think that there's been, an EPA did some assessments of what is the actual consumption variations, and I think it's been found with increasing in air conditioning that there are actually less variation in some of those water consumption based on the different climates. But I mean, that's a good example of continuing to look at what information is out there and refining the recommendations based on that. Do you have anything else to add, Dr.
Brown? Just to say that the net effect of the new recommendations in Austin is 0. I think the change, is from a range of 0.7 to 1.2 parts per million to a recommendation of 0.7 parts per million. We have been at 0.7 all along. Now, it was thought in the past that water consumption varied with latitude, that is, varied with climate, and that in hotter climates, water consumption would be higher. But more recent studies of that have shown that's not the case. And as said, likely this is due to widespread air conditioning.
I guess.
I'm sorry, but that was interesting, but it seemed completely unresponsive to my question. Where are this? I'm sorry.
The other thing that I would add is that 0.7 it's been identified as the optimal level for optimizing the benefits with respect to tooth decay and balancing it with any effects related to mild dental fluorosis.
Okay, based on what? What I'm driving at is I've been involved in an ozone debate. Parts per billion, whatever measurement you have, and there were some controlled exposure studies, rather interesting. They took a control group, they put a mask on somebody, get them to breathe through their mouth, they put a certain, controlled amount of ozone that people ingest, they measure it. It's a scientific study. I'm looking for that on this scientific question. All these scientific organizations that have signed on, and I'm looking for science.
Well, it's based upon 70 years of studies. That's a very long time to be studying this subject. And optimal was defined and has continued to be defined as the balance between caries reduction, tooth decay reduction, and the minimal amount of dental fluorosis. Now, dental fluorosis is, as we're talking about it, is mild, and it's a slight whitening of the teeth. I want to remind you that that's not a problem. It's not a health problem. In fact, I can't even believe that it's an aesthetic problem when millions of people pay to have their teeth bleached and thereby make them look as if they have mild fluorosis. the public doesn't seem to believe it's a problem. They seem to think that's an enhancement. So the 70-year history, I think we ought to be it ought to be pleasing to see that the authorities continue to monitor this, and as they notice a change, a slight increase in this mild fluorosis, largely due to other fluorides in toothpaste and a range of other products, they recommend that the range be reduced from 0.7 to 1.2 and just be set at 0.7. But it's based upon 70 years of experience and studies all over the world.
I have a final question here for Dr. Huang. Do you know of any cities in Texas that have eliminated fluoride treatment in the water, fluoride addition?
Actually, I think Jane Beraser has that information.
I'm Jane Brazier, Assistant Director with Austin Water. In 2011, College Station discontinued fluoridation. It came about when the city manager made a recommendation to eliminate it as part of the budget process. Corpus Christi discontinued the fluoridation, but their equipment broke and they never repaired it. They are now, though, based on data going back to fluoridation, trying to bring that back. Dallas, Texas reviewed the fluoridation issue, and in January of this year they voted to continue fluoridation in that city. San Marcos is currently fluoridating, but the citizens have gathered a petition to support a charter amendment to end fluoridation. That election has not taken place yet.
What about Bryan, Texas?
They're not fluoridating either.
Okay, you left
the
them
articles
out, right?
when I was
Okay.
looking were mixed with College Station, so I couldn't tell who the provider was, if College Station was treating the water for Bryan or not. It was.
No, they quit in about 2006, 2007.
Okay.
Now, the reason that's important is there are, for my information, I went to Texas A&M. I'm familiar with this area.
I did too.
Gig 'em Aggies, there you go.
Yeah.
So, I think there are still people there that don't know that fluoridation has ended. So there's an opportunity there to look at some statistical analysis from, say, the 7-8 years, in that Bryan College Station area, in areas where the fluoridation has ended, and see if there's any difference in the tooth decay or any other symptoms.
Right. I couldn't find any studies where that had been done yet.
Yeah. So, okay, and then finally, one quick thing on the science: the toxicology, the neurotoxin. Fluoride is a neurotoxin potentially in higher concentrations. Was that investigated or even known back in the 1960s? I mean, would anybody think to look at, fluoride as having potential neurotoxic effects in the 1960s?
I can't speak to what was known.
Well, if you're referring to the toxicology of fluorides and not just community water fluoridation, Harold Hodge in Rochester, New York, did those studies in the 50s and 60s, the toxicology of fluorides. But of course, we're talking today about community water fluoridation. We're not talking about fluorides as used in chemical engineering, for instance. So I'm not sure what the point of your question is.
Fair enough. That's all I've got. I want to ask Dr. Cole to come back if you have any questions.
Does anybody have questions? Councilmember Kitchen?
I just wanted to thank you all for everyone for your testimony today. Dr. Wong, I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to some statements that were made, I think maybe by Dr. Cole, but I don't remember you responding to these in particular. There's been a lot of statements about decay rates going up, and so therefore that's proof that community fluoridation doesn't work. I'd like you to respond to that for us. And related to that was the statement that systemic community water fluoridation was not useful, and that in order for fluoridation to be useful to combat tooth decay, it had to be topical. So if you could just speak to those two things.
Sure. In that the July-August 2015 public health reports, report that I think that you all have a copy. They do talk about some of the historic trends in dental caries. So they say, quote, community water fluoridation is a major factor responsible for the decline in prevalence and severity of dental caries during the second half of the 20th century. For adolescents, the prevalence of dental caries in at least one permanent tooth, excluding third molars, decreased from 90% among those aged 12 to 17 years in the 1960s to 60% among those aged 12 to 19 years in 1999 to 2004. During that interval, the number of permanent teeth affected by dental caries, i.e. decayed, missing, and filled, declined from 6.2 to 2.6 respectively. Adults also have benefited from community water fluoridation. The average number of affected teeth decreased from 18 among 35 to 44-year-old adults in the 60s to 10 among 35 to 49-year-old adults in 1999 to 2004. Although data were not age-adjusted, age groups in the 1999 to 2004 survey used a higher upper age limit, and both caries prevalence and number of teeth affected increased with age. Thus, these comparisons may underestimate caries decline over time. One thing also, I know Dr. Cole mentioned the Cochrane report, and the thing is also the results in that report, it still says, data suggests the introduction of water fluoridation resulted in a 35% reduction in decayed, missing, or filled baby teeth and a 26% reduction in decayed, missing, or filled permanent teeth. It also increased the percentage of children with no decay by 15%. Although these results indicate that water fluoridation is effective at reduced levels of tooth decay in children's baby and permanent teeth, the applicability of results to current lifestyle is unclear. And that's where the criteria for studies that the Cochrane report was actually higher than some of the other studies because, you know, they're typically doing like healthcare treatment studies. So you're looking at drug studies where you can do randomized controlled studies. You can do double-blind studies. As Councilmember Zimmerman mentioned, you know, maybe you have this setting in College Station where they don't know if they're fluoridated or not. But typically you can't do that double-blind setting where the evaluator doesn't know if they're from a fluoridated community and the person doesn't know if they're from a fluoridated community, that they're followed up. Some of the criteria for the Cochrane report was that there had to be that follow-up in that same group of patients for 15 years, which again is, you can do these things more in some clinical trials. For community water fluoridation, you can't do that. So I think, you know, that's one of the reasons. What they say is since the 70s there haven't been studies that meet that degree of you know, standards, but that's a very it's a very different standard when we're looking at evaluating community water fluoridation. But there are other studies that have been conducted, contrary to what was said, that have shown still that beneficial effect despite in the setting of fluoridation of toothpaste and other fluoride being available topically. Now, you mentioned, you know, the subject regarding topical versus systemic. And I think, you know, that's why I specifically had a CDC slide that showed CDC says there is still both systemic and topical effects. Now, it's predominantly topical because what you're talking about, the systemic effect, occurs, you know, before the primary teeth, before they've erupted. But then you've got the rest of the life of the person for years that you're getting that beneficial from that topical effect. And the ingestion of the water with fluoride, it's that it's also in the saliva. It's, you know, so the teeth are continuously bathed in that, and so there's beneficial effects to that.
I wanted to mention also that we had a detailed analysis of the resolution here that the ADA put forth, and you all should have received that beforehand. And the systemic versus topical debate was, we had a dozen research articles there describing the systemic benefits of ingesting fluoridated water. And they are mostly dental journals, but we're the ones who study tooth decay, so I don't really know why that's irrelevant. So anyways, you should have that in front of you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Cole, could you put up the slide that you had of different countries, you know, where they're fluoridating water versus ones that are not? There's a couple of things mentioned. Dr. Huang touched on, you know, double-blind studies of things that you can do to try to isolate cause and effect. Very, very, very difficult in a complex world to be exact, to be precise about cause and effect. So you fluoridate the water, and then you look at dental caries. But there's so many other things involved. There's your heredity, your genetics, your diet, your lifestyle, whether you're drinking 4 Cokes a day. Right. Do you brush your teeth? Do you use a fluoridated toothpaste? You know, So to be honest, it'd be very, very complicated. It's very difficult to isolate what the fluoride effect has versus all the other effects. Very expensive and very complicated to do that study. And when I referred to studies, that's what I was looking for, those kind of double blinds and, where you really control so you can isolate what's going on. So if you talk about that for a few minutes, because to me, this decision is about, we're spending around $500,000. I'm looking for cost savings in our budget. And the question of the effectiveness and the proof that we're getting our money's worth is very, very important to my decision. So if you could please talk to that slide and
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I think I've mentioned this in prior arguments in that most of Western Europe, in fact, 98% of Western Europe doesn't fluoridate at all. And there's several countries here to show that your point is so valid. It's all about diet and home care. Fluoride is unnecessary in any form for sound dental health, truly. But let's stick to systemic fluoride. This graph is so important. This is the World Health Organization, and I think you listed them as a proponent of fluoridation, and I don't believe they are. They're an unbiased group, but this is put up by the World Health Organization, and their point was to show that decay rates were going down on a global scale, and that try to determine which ones are fluoridated and which are not. That was the point of this slide, which is why I love this slide, because I still can't look at it except for the fact that U.S. is circled and discern who's who.
And that, should I respond?
Sure.
That was part of my point. You can't put up a slide like this, and this is not an epidemiologic study. In Europe, France, Hungary, Germany, Spain, and Switzerland have salt fluoridation. Finland, there's government-sponsored comprehensive free dental care, intensive topical fluoride regimes, dental sealant programs. There are many factors that have to be looked at when you're evaluating some of these, and you can't just say, here's this, and so these communities.
Okay, you lost me right there because we've been talking fluoride, fluoride's great, got to have fluoride, fluoride's great. We're talking about fluoride today. We're not talking about all those other things we have, dental, the health care that's available. We're talking about fluoride.
Right.
So let's be fair, right?
I'm saying that this particular slide is not a epidemiologic study. There have been numerous hundreds and thousands of epidemiologic studies then that have been performed. The first fluoridation program, that was Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then the children there in Muskegon, the control non-fluoridated community, they were followed regularly for the next 15 years.
Okay, I have to interject because that's not true. I have studied
really
this.
quick. This isn't going to turn into
okay.
a
No,
back
it's
and
not
forth
going to be.
like this.
But
so can you finish?
Yeah.
And then
finish, and then you finish. Okay.
So, and this is exactly the point, that this is not the setting where we were able to actually look at and have, everyone have the studies available to objectively, first you do the literature search to identify all the possible studies, then look at the those that meet the criteria for the methods that are appropriate. Then to look at the different, to try to summarize what are the findings. Are they consistent? What is the total body of evidence? How well performed were these studies? Did they control for these other confounding factors? And that's exactly the point I'm making, that this is not the setting. But there are many expert review panels, which I showed a list. That was the other slide that I showed, the numerous expert review panels that have looked at this. And the conclusions have all been the same.
okay, thank you. Councilmember Houston, do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to say that the city of Austin has been discussing this since 1972. That's when the first, when the referendum was passed and to add water to our fluoride to our water. Now it's making me crazy. To add fluoride to the water. And so we've been having these conversations since then. And so I guess my question is, since this was put into our water by referendum, why don't we just go out and gather 20 signatures and put it back on the ballot?
That'd be great. That'd be great. I promise you, if this came to a vote,
I was just going to say, you don't need our permission to do that. That's a citizen-initiated referendum.
Yeah, but you said 20 signatures. I was going to say.
No, 20,000.
Well, we may have to do that. We're just trying to go the more logical route here. Can I just address that real briefly?
Sure.
In 1944, the ADA, which is our governing group, denounced water fluoridation. And I can read the quote. I've read it many times. It's long, but just briefly, they said, "We do know that the use of drinking water containing as little as 1.2 parts per million of fluorine will cause such developmental disturbances in bones as osteosclerosis, spondylosis, osteopetrosis, as well as goiter, and we cannot afford to run the risk of producing such serious systemic disturbances in applying what is at present a doubtful procedure intended to prevent development of dental disfigurements among children." It goes on and on. 3 months later, they started this Grand Rapids study, and it was supposed to go on for 10 years, Grand Rapids, Michigan versus Muskegon. After 5 years, they realized that decay was going down in both cities, and they just dropped Muskegon as a control city. And that was it. And fluoridation started going. And it was just a bandwagon that wouldn't stop. So there's a lot of players involved. Harold Hodge is one of them. I could name them all. And I won't even get into that part. I just want to stick with the science. It only works topically. So why are we adding it to our water? And one more thing. We're naturally at 0.5 parts per million. Do we really got to spend $600,000 a year to bring it up 0.2 parts per million? If it's so great, and we have other sources of it? Yeah, you said that before.
That is incorrect. We're at 0.2 parts per million. During the drought, up to 0.24. We bring it up to 0.7, and we only spend $330,000, including the maintenance on the system.
Okay, so what? And that's throughout the year. It's always at whatever you said, 0.24. Because you said before.
No, it goes 0.2 to 0.24. It ranges a little bit during the drought. I mean, most time during normal flows, 0.2. During the drought, we saw it come up to about 0.24. That's happened in the past, so that's common.
Okay, I don't want this to turn into a back and forth like that. So I have a question about. I haven't personally heard fluoride's great from this side. My understanding is it's an effective way to prevent tooth decay. So, and I understand the argument of topical versus systematic, but what could the alternative be if it's not in the water and if it's simply a matter of a family going and getting fluoride somewhere and putting it on their teeth? You mentioned that you have access to bottled water, so it doesn't hurt you, but it hurts families that can't afford that. So what about families? So what's the alternative if it's not in the water? How do you get every single family to topically apply it?
If you turn that faucet off tomorrow where there's no fluoride, you'll see no changes whatsoever. Nothing will change in the city. Trust me on that. It doesn't have any effect. So if you're asking them what they can do, well, gosh, they can brush and floss. They can have a decent diet. I have 2 young children that have had no fluoride, at least not, under my control. Obviously, it's in some foods and all that. They eat junk all the time. They have 0 cavities. And the reason why is they clean their teeth and they have a good overall sound diet. That is the answer.
Councilmember Kitchen.
I want to thank everyone for coming to speak. I don't know about my fellow council members, but I'm ready to move on.
Sure.
And so I don't know what our next step is, but I think it's time to move on.
Sure. I'll entertain a motion after. Councilmember, did you have a question, Councilmember?
No, I had a statement. Okay. And thank you so much for everybody for being here. And I know everybody is passionate about this subject. I would just like to make a comment regarding every child having the kind of home that has a healthy diet and has parents that are able to do the things that were just mentioned. In District 1, about 6,000 of my kids go to sleep hungry every night. And so to assume that because of that, their circumstances and the low resources that their parents are trying to provide them with the kinds of lives that are traumatic at best, I think that most of my kids would have more dental caries than they do now, because that's the only health care that they get. No dental care do they get, except for the van that goes through and doesn't reach all of our kids. So when we try to compare how your life might be and how other children's lives may be, I don't think that's a very fair comparison, and I don't think that we have a standard of living at this point in our city where we can make those assumptions for people. So I just needed to say that because we've got a lot of low-income families in this city who don't have the opportunity to see a dentist on a regular basis, don't know how to floss or brush, or they don't have healthy foods to eat. So I just needed to say that for the record.
Thank you, Councilmember Houston. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'd like to move that we advance this issue on fluoridation to the full City Council for discussion with no recommendation.
Is there a second to that? So that motion fails for lack of a second. Does anybody else? Does anybody else have a motion they want to? Go ahead.
I'll make a statement, but
Sure.
I will just explain my approach. And thank you, Councilmember Zimmerman, for bringing this forward, and I appreciate everyone coming to speak. I have to say that I trust our public health officials. They have dug into this. The great weight of the evidence supports community water fluoridation. I think it's critical for our kids. I want to thank Councilmember Houston for her. I want to thank Councilmember Houston for her statement, and I have to tell you that I support the continued community water fluoridation, because as far as I'm concerned, the risk to our children is much, much greater without having community water fluoridation.
Thank you, Councilmember. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda.
Excuse me, Chair.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Houston. I'm going to yield to you and the Health and Human Services.
The reason that we had this, excuse me, we've been respectful of everybody who's been in this room. We ask you to treat the rest of us with that same respect. I would appreciate it. So that we had two committees, council committees, who were listening to the fluoride issue today. And so I'd like to see from the members of the Health and Human Services Commission if there is a motion of any kind. No? Okay, so we will show for the record that the Health and Human Service makes no recommendation on the issue of fluoride, which means that it doesn't go any further than this committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Houston. And so also for the public utilities, let the record reflect that we also did not send this item to the council with any recommendation.